how does the gospel reveal equality between men and women? And in what sense does that word equality need to be specified or qualified?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, we look at the ways in which Jesus deals with women, the way he speaks with women, the way he speaks with uh, sinners, you know, women that were considered women that you shouldn't even talk to or go near, right? The woman at the well, Mary Magdalene, the way he relates to Martha and Mary, uh, the way he, um, when he says, you know, he who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart, right? Adultery the for the Jews a lot of times was seen more as a violation of someone else's property, right? You
Hmm.
steal somebody else's wife, you know, that's his wife, that's his property. You shouldn't be with her. And so
Right.
he restores and deepens the meaning of that commandment against adultery to say, no, you shouldn't be looking at a woman in that way, right? So it's a
Mm.
restoring of her dignity. Uh, and certainly, you know, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither male nor female. You know, the um, St. Paul echoing the fact that that salvation is for everyone, and you know, with him, there's just no, there is no distinction in terms of who is fit for union with God. And so, again, we are equal in that way. But of course, we now hear the word equality, and oftentimes it's reduced to sameness, identicalness. I know that's not really a word, but identicalness. When two things are identical, uh, you lose so much, of course. One of the concepts that I talk about in the book is the concept of asymmetry. And I think Jesus is using examples again and again in his teachings about the conditions necessary for the bearing of fruit. And he talks about there has to be, you know, a union of seed with good soil. Seed and soil are non-identical things, right? But
Mm.
unless these two different things come into receptive union, there will be no fruit. A branch with the vine, unless they're in union, there will be no fruit. And so these examples from just sort of organic reality, we see that there cannot be a union unless there are two distinct, non-identical elements. There is the generous element and the receptive element. It corresponds to the elements necessary for a gift. You cannot have a union with someone else without a voluntary offering and a voluntary reception. And
Mm.
so you simply can't have union without that between ourselves and God. And again, Adam and Eve didn't have that trust, and they didn't have that vulnerability. They were afraid. They were put off by the vulnerability required in actually saying yes to what God was offering them. And so I think that when we talk about equality, we have to talk about the fact that no, we are all created for union with the divine. But equality doesn't mean sameness. And even the fact that when St. Paul is saying, you know, there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free, that's sort of acknowledging that there's going to be a lot of difference out there. Okay. Not that
Right.
we want to continue with slavery or anything, but just acknowledging people where they are. Nope. Everybody is fit for union with God. Everyone is capacitated for union with God. And so trying to understand that equality doesn't mean sameness. And sameness is just going to lead to sort of solitariness. You can't have communion unless you have differentiation, unless you have asymmetry. Those
Right.
are the elements required for true union.
Yeah, it seems like a very Protestant idea that like equality in capacity for union with Christ means that we don't make any distinctions between persons, including in matters of authority. But let me play devil's advocate and ask, well, what about friendship? I mean, friendship, sure, there's giving, there's receiving, there has, but one isn't always, you know, the giver, and one isn't always the receiver. So, you know, isn't that a sort of communion? Why can't marriage be like that?
Interesting. Um, well, in I'm thinking off the cuff because I haven't been that one hasn't been proposed to me before. Yes, there's definitely mutual giving and receiving in friendships. And as I point out in the book, there is mutual giving and receiving between spouses. It's just that at the most fundamental level, what we have to look at it is we can have multiple friendships, right? And sometimes friendships wane and they wax, but we can maintain many friendships. As a matter of fact, probably the reason we are somewhat limited in our friendships is simply because of space and time, right?
Right.
The more the merrier, actually, with friends, except that we're limited by space and time, and in heaven we won't be. But marriage, again, mirroring, being a reflection of the relation of Christ and the church, is an exclusive. It's an exclusive union par excellence. And because you don't get married to multiple people, right? This is a relationship which is a reflection of the exclusivity that we have between ourselves and God. Of course, God is infinite, so he doesn't have to be exclusive, but so it's not the more the merrier, right? It's three's company, or two's company, three's a crowd. Sorry, three's company. Bad reference. Because the particular kind of union that marriage is, right? The two become one flesh. That's what our Lord tells us, right? It says so in Genesis, and then Jesus quotes Genesis, right? The two shall become one flesh. And to say one flesh, it's a true oneness. And of course, that oneness is then sort of made visible in the child, right? And you realize that this is not just any kind of union, right? This isn't just, friendships can be super deep, they can be light, they can, like I said, there can be sort of a variety. But within marriage, this is an exclusive union. And this union is one which is actually going to be the formative atmosphere for this child that's actually going to reveal God to this child. Now, I know that puts a lot of pressure on marriage, but nonetheless, so this union has to be sort of, it's very particular. And so this dynamic of giving and receiving, while again, as I talk about in the book, a woman does give to her husband. She gives, but often her generosity is precisely in receiving well what he does for her. Because a woman can do many, many nice concrete gestures for her husband, but unless she is also simultaneously receiving what he does in an appreciative, grateful, respectful, however you want to say it, way, there's not going to be unity in that marriage. There's going to be tension, and there's going to be resentment, there's going to be unhappiness. So I think because of the one flesh union, that it is the union par excellence that mirrors God to world, and in particular the children who grow up in that family, that it really is important that we love, I guess, according to our gender. But again, when it comes to other friendships in life, right, a lot of them are same-sex friendships, right? When it comes to the relationship between man and woman, the deepest form of friendship between them, I think it requires this generosity and receptivity. But again, it doesn't mean women aren't generous and men aren't receptive, but the primary mode is such that a woman can give all sorts of things to her husband, but the union won't be there unless he receives him in a particular way.